On this episode of Made in America, we're going to cover some really interesting topics, including how just changing your perspective on your own product can springboard you to success, and why training people to be utility players is so critical. I'm with Brett Greene, president of Willington Nameplate. Stay tuned to hear what they make and why they make it. Welcome to this episode of the Made in America podcast. I'm with Brett Greene from Willington Nameplate. Super excited to hear about all the stuff they're doing out in Stafford Springs and all about their growth. So let's get started. Hey, Brett, thanks so much for coming on today.
Good morning, Ari. Thanks for having me.
So listen, it's the Made in America podcast. We always start off with the same question. What do you guys make and why do you make it?
That's a great question. We enable essential communication.
Okay.
Basically, we make identification products that will caution, instruct, or inform users of their products. And there could be anything from what we call a nameplate, which could be a seat number at Gillette Stadium that tells you what row and what seat you're sitting in,
Sure.
to a VIN tag on a car,
Okay.
or to a caution label that says, don't put your hand here.
Okay, so those would be pretty important.
Yeah.
So making some labels, and I guess the Willington Nameplate kind of gives us that information.
Yeah. So
So why does Willington Nameplate exist, and why do you guys do what you do?
I think because of our quality and our service are our biggest differentiators.
Okay.
It's a family-run business, second generation. We have a fantastic culture. I mean, that's really our biggest strength is our team and how we operate. We operate as a unit. We work to the good of the customer and the good of the company, and we meld those two together, and it equals success.
Nice.
We've been around. I think this will be our 55th year coming up.
All right, so maybe we could talk a little about the origin story. So always good to hear about family businesses. So let's talk about that. So how did Willington Nameplate get started 55 years ago?
So the current co-owners, brother and sister, their father started the business when he was 26 years old. 3 kids at 26 years old. He was working for a competitive nameplate company up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Didn't like the direction there, what was going on, and he kind of said, the heck with it. I'm going to try this on my own. And perseverance. That's the key term that we give for Marcel. He persevered. He worked his ass off.
Yep, that's okay.
Say that.
No, absolutely. We can say ass on here.
worked extremely hard.
Yeah.
100-hour weeks, whatever it took to get the business rolling. He probably didn't get paid for the first few years, maybe more than that. It was a struggle for the family during that time. But little by little, he was able to showcase his talents from a quality perspective and grab new customers. And as that customer base grew, the business was able to grow. And eventually the kids got involved.
Yep.
And they helped take it to the next level. And that's kind of where the status quo that we're at today.
Stands today.
Yep.
So I think I had read somewhere, and I know you've only been with the company like 7 years. Is that about right?
Yeah.
So, but I think I read somewhere that Marcel sold his car and like mortgaged his house or something to get this business started. I mean, listen, having started my own business myself, I was fortunate enough not to have to, sell a car and all that stuff. But I know what it takes, or I know how hard it can be to kind of take that first step.
Oh God.
And it seems like Marcel went all in from day one. So I don't know if you know that story and maybe want to share that, but it's always inspiring for me.
I don't know all the details of that story, but he sacrificed an awful lot, both for himself, his wife, and his family. For quite a few years. Like I said, I wouldn't say they didn't make it until well after 10 years of being in business. And when he did make it, the best thing about him and his family, they're the same people today to when they were struggling.
When they got
and that's, everybody, I can't tell you how much the employees, customers, vendors appreciate the fact that they're just very tried and true people, and they've held true to their roots. I mean, that's extremely important.
It's extremely important. I think it's really a unique thing, right? When you start a business and you go through that struggle, you really get to understand that, and you can appreciate the success, all that much more. So that's really a great story. So before we get back into Willington Nameplate, Brett, let's get a little bit of kind of on your background. I know you kind of started out as a finance guy, but you've worked in a lot of the big names around Connecticut. You worked at Pratt for a while, and then Barnes Aerospace, president of another welding company, and then kind of worked your way up to become president of Willington Nameplate. So I don't know, just share with the audience kind of what's your background and how did you end up with the position you are today?
Yeah, I'm kind of was a numbers guy, so accounting was kind of a natural progression for me to go to school. I went to the University of Connecticut, go Huskies.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I graduated there, went to UTC, started at Hamilton, worked my way over to Pratt. interesting. You know, it's good. You're a big company, right? Big bureaucracy dealing with politics, but a lot of processes in place, a lot of training programs. Definitely helped me appreciate and learn a lot of things for who I am today,
Sure.
and things I wouldn't want to put in place if I was ever in a leadership position, right?
Sure.
There's just a lot of people, a lot of moving parts. But you can learn a lot. There was a lot of good people I was able to get acquainted with and build good networks, right? I still am in contact with a lot of those people that I met early on in my career that helped develop me, who I am today. Did a lot of education. I have 3 master's degrees, 2 from Rensselaer, 1 from Kettering University, which is actually the old General Motors Institute.
Oh, I didn't
they had
know
their own university when they used to be a big Goliath.
Right.
So at some point it got sold, but I got an operations degree through there. So I love to learn. I love to grow. I don't ever feel like that confident that I know everything. I think that's pretty ignorant.
Yep.
Every day, if I haven't learned at least one thing, I failed probably.
That's right.
I definitely look at it from that perspective. So education was a component of that. And it also, again, helped with my networking, learning from others. What are other people doing out in other industries, other types of companies. So
how did you go kind of from big business aerospace, right? You know, Fortune 50, UTC. You know, they went to Barnes, which is, you know, Barnes Aerospace is also a very big company.
Very successful.
You know, and I actually don't know the background too much about the AMK welding, but I don't know, just maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, how you went from a big company to sort of, you've gone from huge to, you know, down to smaller business. And at the same time, you went from finance to, you know, management, top level management. And I think you might agree that when you're the president of an organization, it's really less about the how and the what and more about the who. It's really about building people and helping people learn and grow. So I just, you know, I'm curious. I think people would love to hear about how you've made that transition.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough when I worked at Barnes. I was assistant controller at that company and had a great job. My boss, the controller, was a great guy. I learned a lot from him. But the plant manager was an ex-finance guy who was now an operations or plant manager. We had some openings for our operations manager level, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, Brett, would you be interested in
getting into
being
operations?"
an operations guy?" I looked at him like he was nuts. I said, "I'm a numbers guy. What do I know about making parts?"
Right.
He goes, "It's not about making parts. It's about leading people, you know, and motivating people." And he goes, "Brett, you're really good with people." You know, it was kind of the light bulb went off, and okay, if you think that's what it's about. And certainly that was his approach. And one of the things I was able to learn from him was he was just really good with people. He was very strategic. He had that financial accounting acumen when it came to strategic planning and thought process. So, you know, what better mentor to have than a guy who's kind of lived it and gone into it. And
That's
I said,
right.
if he sees something in me that can get there, I've always been kind of a planner, an organizer, and a leader within my cliques, so to speak. So I kind of had a natural inclination for leadership, and I said, okay, you know, let's take the risk.
Yeah.
You know, what's to go there? And I had all the technical capable people working for me.
Sure.
So I just had to learn and ask questions, right? But use my people skills to make sure we're moving all moving in the right direction, and learning from one another and growing. So that's how I got into the operations piece. And I've been in there ever since. And I would honestly tell you, I wouldn't go back.
No.
And because I like actually being involved with making stuff and interacting constantly with people.
Yep.
You know, in finance, you can kind of get stuck in your little office there, crunching away on numbers, and you kind of miss a lot of things.
Not
going
so different
by.
from IT, I might add, right?
Yeah.
You're in the wrong space. You're sitting there staring at a computer all day,
Not
right?
with your type of organization. That's why you've leveraged out. So I've grown in you know, different leadership positions from there. And the welding company was actually as a sub-tier supplier to Barnes. That's how I got integrated there.
Okay.
And I had as I've gone, and I have gotten into smaller companies, but I think what I was looking for was, you know, a little bit more control of the overall culture component, trying to be able to enact my values my strategic concepts to the organization, whereas with the bigger companies, you were somewhat limited.
Yeah, harder to make your vision come alive with
Absolutely.
100,000 people around you.
Absolutely.
Than for you to get your arms around something a little bit smaller, so you can kind of bring it to life. So how did you get to Willington? How did they find you? How did you get there?
So my boss, one of the co-owners, I met him at the gym in the morning.
Okay.
For years, about 2 years, I had known him, and he would always ask me, "You want to come work for me? You want to come work for me?" I was like, "Mike, I'm running a welding company. I got a good gig here. I don't need to come work for you." And I'll say, fortunately, I was let go from the welding company. And I came in the gym the following week after that. I'm not one of the guys that can sit on my hands for very long, and so I was already actively moving. I said, "Mike, I'm ready to come work for you." He kind of looked at me like a deer in headlights, and he said, "What do you mean?" So I got
Time
let
is
go.
now.
Let's talk.
Right.
So he wasn't quite prepared, even though he wanted it. He wasn't
Right.
prepared for it. So it took a little bit of time, but we made it work. And certainly I went to visit the company, and I could feel the culture right away when you get in there and you talk to a few people. And I'm like, wow, this is the kind of place where I want to spend my time and the type of teams I want to work with. And so I said, "Mike, I'll accept the offer." And as I mentioned to you, couldn't ask for anything more. It's 4 miles from my house.
Yep.
So it's an easy commute. And it's a lot of fun. I can actually say of all the jobs I've had in my career, every day I wake up looking forward to going to work.
That's fantastic.
Not everybody can say that.
Not
right?
everyone can say that, and that's got to be the dream, right? Because
Absolutely.
you have a family that you love. I know you've got 2 beautiful daughters,
Yep.
and you love doing that. So if you can also have a job that you look forward to going to every day, I mean, that's victory right there.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of Willington, and I know that you know people might not understand how you differentiate yourself kind of in the naming business, right? And maybe you want to kind of go through that story, because I know that's something even before you and I met. I know that that's something I'd read about. There were some articles in the paper a number of years ago. I know you guys worked with a marketing and branding company,
Yep.
Fathom, out of West Hartford, that at least publicly you guys have credited quite a bit with
Yep.
helping kind of rebrand. And listen, a lot of people might look at it and go, "Hey, these are just signs and naming. Isn't that a commodity? How have you guys survived cheap offshore, whatever?" I think talk about that, because the story I think is really impressive, and maybe even start with the 90s, because if I'm not mistaken, in the 90s, a number of Willington customers did try and go that sort of cheap offshore route, and I think a lot of those customers have come back. So talk about how you guys made that happen.
All right. So let me just start with the branding piece. And that was a big deal. We historically, people would have referred to our what we make as a nuisance commodity.
Okay.
Which really, when you boil it down, it's like kind of like shame on us and our organization for even thinking like that, because it really devalues all the hard work that all of our employees put into making these products.
And why would someone even think it was a nuisance commodity? Because who actually wants a
of the
sign?
perception from the customer. To your point, you buy a $40,000, $50,000, $100,000 vehicle.
Right.
The vehicle is absolutely useless if you don't have what? A VIN tag.
That's right.
The VIN tag probably costs all of 30 cents. Right. Right? Probably the lowest level of the bill of material for the
an
vehicle.
automobile, sure.
So just to put it in perspective, such a small dollar value in comparison, but yet it's the most integral component of that vehicle.
Sure.
So
it's the name that identifies it from every other vehicle.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So, working with Fathom really helped put the light on it. We can't devalue what we do. And if we are talking like that and feeling like that, well, what a perception are we giving off to our customers?
Absolutely.
So that kind of changed our mindset. That's where we came up with the enabling essential communication. It's not just a nuisance commodity. It's something that adds value to the end customer. And sets them in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's how we kind of changed that. So we've been definitely changing our mindset, and that word was jettisoned from our vocabulary.
So just before we get, because we'll get into more of the other stuff, let's just stick on this for a little bit. So how did you guys go through that? What was the process that you went through to kind of for discovery of that? Was it literally just bringing in, the Fathom team and bringing in an outside perspective? Because sometimes, I'm always fond of saying you can't read the label from inside the bottle.
Yes.
So sometimes you don't even see yourself, correctly. Was it as simple as that? Was there an exercise? Like, how did they do that to help you kind of get the right message?
They have a routine.
Okay.
But definitely it was more spawned from Fathom, and they really opened our eyes to that reality of why are we even using that term, regardless of if we feel that our customers perceive it to be such. Shame on us for just even doing that. But we worked as a team. We involved actually just about every employee at the company as part of a brainstorming session to take a look of who we are and try and look outward.
Yep.
Like you said, that is it's obviously very difficult. And they really help stretch. That's why they become a really good strategic partner for us, because they force you to think outside the box and think differently, and branch out and take a little chance.
Yeah, and see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you switch that mindset from a nuisance product to enabling essential communication, which, by the way, just sounds awesome,
doesn't it? So
yeah, it's really it's a good turn of phrase, I have to say, and it's memorable, right? Yep. Enabling essential communication. Yep. So you make that change, you make the mental switch internally. The team at Willington gets behind it, obviously, from ownership and leadership all the way down through. How did you activate that vision? What did you guys do to go, okay, we're going to get the market to see us how we really are? How did you guys do that?
So we had internal and external components. Internally, we actually changed our logo. We had a very stodgy, old school logo that wasn't even pertinent to who we were today. With that decision came, more forward thinking too, and just not what works today, but what will also work in the future.
Yep.
So we rebranded ourselves. When we rebranded, we came up with a new logo that really fit with who we are, with the identification, caution, the safety. That's our current logo instills all those components. And we also got new swag for everybody, right? To help the internal branding and the reminder that we enable essential communication. So we did a lot of internal marketing, but then we also worked on the external piece. We completely revamped our website. Brought it up to snuff. Modern. It was
modern day.
It was probably 10 or 12 years old, and it wasn't really updated.
Yep.
But with that, it's also the importance that it's not just something you update every 10 or 12 years. It has to be an ongoing tool to help market yourself, whether it be for sales or for information for your customers, you name it. And also telling your story, right? Continually telling your story. You got to use that as a tool. So we did that, and then just also improved our marketing efforts, which were very spotty over time, with more of a recurring presence. And that's still something I'll say we're still in our infancy, because we don't have any full-time resource for marketing.
So what do you guys do to get the word out there for marketing? I mean, for those people that haven't been to the website, and certainly encourage people to go, we'll link it in the show notes as we always do. But it's a quality site, right? Just not to get into the technical aspects of it, but it looks good whether you look at it mobile or on your computer. You've got some video and introductory video that's right on the site. So you've got kind of that part. You introduce the people, and we're going to get to the culture, and the people is a big part of Willington. That's on there. Request for a quote is on there. Your guys' process and what makes you guys unique is on there. So it's a great presence. And certainly activates the vision. What do you guys do to get that in front of customers? How did you get it in front of existing customers to change their perception? And how did you get it in front of new customers?
It's an ongoing process.
Sure.
But certainly with new customers.
Never-ending battle, right?
Yep. It's always never-ending, and it's uphill. We built marketing collateral, sell sheets that are very simple, concise tools that we can get out in front of them, which then we can follow up with the website, which is certainly much more robust. With existing customers, more so sending them out and getting direction, building links into our signatures. From that, kind of pushing them for information when they're asking, have you gone to the website? Constantly reinforcing the fact that there is a very active tool out there that is modern, it's up to date, and it tells our story pretty well. So.
And did it take you so once you made the switch to the new Willington nameplate vision and mantra, did customers, once you start talking to them, did they see it right away and are like, wow, that does make sense? Did it take a while? Talk about that a little bit.
I wouldn't say it took a while. Some noticed right away. Some, we deal with some big OEMs that, they don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. So we didn't go into this blindfolded to think that this was going to be great for everybody.
Right.
We knew there would be a small subcomponent of existing that could utilize it and would benefit from it. It was more for the prospecting and the new customers. That's really what we strategically built this new platform for and around. And it has helped. Has it been gangbusters? Not by any means. And I don't think we expected that. Right. Given our industry, it's a little difficult. But part of what we're trying to do is always find new avenues of what's the right way to market the company. And Fathom continues to help us off and on with different projects. And also as part of our growth, strategically, we're always thinking of, do we need the resource? Do we not? Do we use partners?
Right.
To always make sure we're evolving and making sure we're with the times.
Yeah, that sounds great. So just as a random side note, I don't think I've ever told you this. Fathom actually created our logo as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so many years ago. So there we go. So who uses the Willington Nameplate products? Like what industries are you guys in? Talk about that a little bit. Well, you mentioned the VIN number, so that's cars and other automobiles.
So, one of our biggest components is industrial OEM, pump makers, motors, valves. That was the core of what the company was founded on. Mm-hmm. It's about 60% of our overall business.
Okay.
And it's shrinking.
Okay.
In a positive way, because we're bringing on and we're working our way into more active industries, something that's near and dear to our heart here in Connecticut, the aerospace market.
Yep.
So we've grown our aerospace segment quite a bit. It's all upwards of almost 20% of our business these days.
Oh, wow.
Both direct with some OEMs, but mostly to the sub-tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3 suppliers. We are involved heavily in the automotive market. It's, again, about 15%. And then a lot in the military and DOD.
Oh, okay.
That's another about 15%. That probably doesn't all add up, but
we'll get there.
It's all mixed together in there. But we've been focusing heavily on the military, defense,
in the aerospace,
automotive, and the aerospace.
So what, in aerospace, like where are these labels going? Because I know you guys have done all kinds of stuff, like caution, don't touch this, it's hot. Like, talk about that a little bit.
The oxygen masks. So our customer makes the units for those oxygen masks, and we have about 3 or 4 labels on those units.
Okay.
We have numerous components, nameplates on engine components or on the engine infrastructure, a lot on the airframe, the landing gear. You name it, it's there. Sikorsky Helicopter is one of our bigger accounts too. A lot of the labels and nameplates inside a helicopter are plates that we've made.
Made right here in Connecticut.
Right here in Connecticut.
So let's talk a little about the growth of Willington Nameplate over the years. So talk how has the growth been, say over the last decade, and what do you guys see kind of in the decade coming up?
Last decade probably about doubled.
Okay.
I would say, and that was organic and through acquisition. We did our first major acquisition about 8 years ago. A company called Decorated Products out of Massachusetts. We divested them and ingested them fully into our existing operation.
Okay.
So we pretty much just acquired a customer base. There wasn't, unfortunately, a lot of machinery or technology we were able to garner from them, but just complementary. And that's actually how we got our foot in the door with our automotive.
Okay.
And actually the key piece of that whole acquisition was forcing us to get certified, ISO certified, and get a quality system in place for our organization. Because that's been one of our key differentiators now within our competitive landscape, is having those quality certifications, having a robust quality system that forces continuous improvement, which obviously benefits us, but the end result is the benefits to the customer.
Yep.
So we are ISO certified. We have our IATF certification through the automotive,
Yep.
and then we also have the AS certification through the aerospace, which very few of our competitors have all 3 of those if they even have ISO.
Right. And so what's the benefit that quality is done? Obviously quality, fewer defects, probably more throughput per person. What does the customer get out of the quality? Just guaranteed like on-time delivery, the right parts? Talk about the value of...
It definitely, supports the delivery, but the quality is the biggest piece, right? Do it right the first time. We don't want to get any feedback or returns from customers, even though we do occasionally get that. And then just the support that they know that you're mitigating their risk as part of their supply chain to always deliver what you're supposed to deliver, right? To their specifications. Because a lot of these aerospace companies, they have specs or blueprints that are 50 years old, right? They were drawn up of when we were still in World War II.
Yeah.
They haven't been changed since, even though they get parts that aren't made anything like what they do today. So part of our differentiator as we're prospecting is we say, well, send us your current sample part, send us your blueprint, and we'll vet that for you. Are you getting what's specified on your blueprint? And
a lot of times,
8 times out of 10, they're not.
Really?
Yeah. But it works, right? Nothing's happened with it. And so over time, they get grandfathered and they just take it as is.
Right.
But it helps reinforce the investments in our quality system to say, we know and we make things to specification,
right.
to print, and
we'll give you what
yours
you
is not.
want
We'll
when
give
you
you
want
what
it
you're
first
actually
time.
looking for.
So-
But then that's a double-edged sword because now they've been getting it for so long, right? Well, I don't know if I want to change.
If I want to go back to my original specification.
But it helps highlights that the company's competency from a quality and an engineering perspective.
It's high, yeah.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about, you mentioned aerospace, and clearly there's been a big aerospace boom. And I think in general in Connecticut, we're seeing a big resurgence in manufacturing, and it's not just in aerospace. Aerospace, medical devices, really all types of manufacturing, defense, clearly, General Dynamics,
Yeah.
Electric Boat's doing a lot.
Huge.
So are you seeing the same things that I'm seeing out there from the manufacturing resurgence? And what do you see? How is that going to impact Willington Nameplate over the coming years, do you think?
I'm definitely seeing it. Yeah, you can definitely feel that. We've tried to get. We don't do any work with Groton, and certainly we've seen their growth, and we're trying to build networks and contacts
Sure.
to get involved with them. But we do work for Pratt and Whitney. We do work for Sikorsky. We do work for Hamilton, which is now Collins, right?
Right.
So we do have tentacles into all those people, and we're looking to continue to grow with them. But there's been significant growth there. I think the biggest challenge is, which most people are seeing, is the resource constraint, right? Finding the right people that fit, the company who you want to be and who you are today. And with everyone looking for those resources, they're hard to come by.
Yeah, that recruiting, finding the right talent, the right staff. So let's pull on that. I'm gonna pick up on what your wife does because it's related a little bit. So we'll get to that. But I think talk a little bit about Willington. I know culture is a really big thing there, and sort of from my position, I think recruiting and recruiting. A big part of recruiting is retention, right? So we want to keep the great people that we have because then less positions to fill.
Yep.
And if we've got a great place to work, I think that helps on the recruiting front. So that's kind of my big take on it. But talk a little bit about, first of all, your take and what Willington is doing on the recruiting and retention area.
Yeah, and that's actually been an area of focus of ours over the past, I'd say, 2 years, is really revamping our hiring process and our onboarding process for when we do bring in new employees. Because we're trying to change that mindset. We have a great culture. We want to continue to maintain that culture, but we also want to enhance it. By enhancing is bringing in individuals that are going to help the company achieve our goals for the future. I told the ownership by the time I retire, which is still a long ways away, I wanted to double the size of the business. So when I started, it was a little under 11 million. So my goal is about 22 million within about 15 more years.
Okay.
So that's a challenge. To do that, I have to have the right people, right? And the right structure in place. So we've revamped our whole hiring process. It's much more robust as opposed to people coming in. We check a pulse and we put them right to work.
Right.
We actually put them through a gauntlet. We have steps. We do
Can
a phone.
Would you mind elaborating? Yeah, I'd love to elaborate on
we
that.
start with a phone interview.
Sure.
Just to even start that.
So how do they
list.
even get into the phone interview process? Are you guys posting online?
We're doing different avenues. We've partnered with a variety of different service companies. We actually even put our own, since we can kind of make some good visual controls for ourselves.
Yeah, I would think.
We put some stuff and collateral around town.
Yep.
Because about 60% of our workforce is from the local area.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty high.
Yeah.
Although it continues to branch out as we bring in different people.
Sure.
So we can do that. Certainly, we used to do more through digital print, but we haven't had much success. Any of the online,
like the job boards
firms,
online,
ZipRecruiter, those not much success.
Yeah.
Best success and successful companies that have good cultures is word of mouth.
Yep.
Right. Getting people that understand your company, love the company. Who better to market and sell the company than those individuals to either friends, family?
Yeah.
And because today,
you guys pay a bounty. So if I work for you,
you get a $100 bonus if you bring someone in and that we end up hiring them.
All right, that's great. So you find someone you're interested in, and then step one is a phone interview.
Phone interview,
Yep.
And it's a series of questions. So I think we have about 10 questions. It's pretty standardized. Then from there, if that passes the mustard, then we bring them in for interview with their front line, who would be supervisor or manager.
Okay.
Maybe one other person. And there's some scripted, again, key things that we detailed that we want to look for. And if that passes, then they come back and they go to the tribunal. We have
the tribunal.
We have
so Survivor Island tribunal.
There's a cast of about 3 people, different leadership positions, nothing directly related to the individual of where they might be working. And we have a little criteria matrix that we go through. And after the interview, They'll score that, and then we'll all get together as a team and review and determine, is this the right fit for Willington or is it not? And that's how we'll make our decision.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
process.
so it's for a company our size, that's pretty robust. Does it work perfectly every time? No, but it's still a newer process for us, and we're working our way through. But
what are you looking for, kind of when you're interviewing? In these standardized questions, what are the things you guys are looking for in general? What are some of the traits or characteristics or?
The biggest thing is we're looking for the fit. We can train anybody for skills.
Yep.
We build standard work. Part of our lean initiatives is having that standard work for the ease of training, ease of consistency.
Yep.
And you have the right people to do that. You just need the right fit. And because of our culture, it's extremely important that we bring people in that aren't going to, help deviate from that.
Sure.
So fit is number one. Skills, if necessary, we'll include that. But some of the key things, curiosity. Right, I want people to come in and challenge the organization. Why are we doing this? Well, it's always been done that way. I can't stand, and I'm sure you, right? I can't stand that.
The worst answer ever.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Stop right there, rewind that, and come back at me again, because I can't stand when I hear that.
That is not a there's no value in that answer,
None.
right? Like, because we've been doing it,
Right.
So what you're saying is, if we've been making a mistake for 10 years, then we should continue to make
Right.
that mistake. Yeah.
Customer doesn't call it, keep making it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. Which doesn't really go with the continuous improvement culture, right?
Right. So curiosity is a big one.
That's
And we've
great.
all kind of agreed that, just being curious, certainly being aggressive, being a motivated individual, someone that wants to grow. We're very upfront with new hires and potential hires that, hey, you're going to come in and pretty much the job description thing, and I'm having a hard time with the co-owner, Lynn, who's the human resources, getting it past. We're bringing in a Willington Nameplate employee. We're not bringing someone in for CNC machining.
Right, or whatever.
We're not bringing someone in for inspection shipping.
Right.
Even though they may be.
That might be their role today.
Right. They're should be coming in as a Willington employee with the goal that you're going to learn and grow with the company. You're going to do a variety of different things.
Yeah.
It's just like anyone else. It's key. You got to have workforce flexibility. We have over 1,300 active customers. Everything from a big OEM of a Cummins
Right.
to Joe's Garage that orders something 3 times, once every 3 years. But to do that, there's not a lot of consistency in ordering patterns, and what's hot this week from a process might not be hot next week.
Right.
So those resources need to flow, and we're really building up our cross training program, getting depth on critical processes. So you can't say, oh, sorry, customer, you can't have your parts today because Joe's on vacation. He's the only guy that runs that machine.
No, nobody wants to hear that.
No one.
Yeah.
No one. So I cringe. That's my other one of my cringe-worthy topics when I hear that in the morning meeting. Well, no parts today.
Yeah.
Well, why? Right? We got to question ourselves why, and it's because we lack the depth.
Right.
So we're still identifying those, and we're working towards
if we
building
can't
that.
deliver something today because Joe Smith isn't here, the core problem isn't that Joe Smith isn't here. It's that we don't have a training program that has enabled someone other than just Joe to run that machine.
Correct.
So that's exciting. So really looking, I think curiosity is a great thing. Do you guys have any unique or interesting questions that you ask people that you think that the audience might be interested in, that you try and suss out this stuff? We had a previous guest that came up with this random thing. Have you ever baled hay before, and how that worked for them in manufacturing? Do you guys have any kind of interesting questions?
We did come up with some quirky ones, and it's too bad. Of course, I can't remember them at this time. But yeah, we did. We tried to include that, something that really fostered them to think and say, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So I'll have to get back to you.
All right, that's fine. It's funny. I just
baled hay, that's a good one.
It is. And then the other one I remember is, and this one we use here, is like, if you were a car, what kind of car would you be?
So we have some like that. I just don't remember what they are.
So once I kind of go through that process and I get hired, you talked about onboarding as a critical component. So what is the onboarding process like at Willington, and what does it feel like for me to go work there?
So currently, when new hires come in, we get them, first of all, implemented with their team. They go through their safety training is first and foremost. They sit and go through their documentation, but then they go with their team. We have upwards of about 30 to 60 days with their team and just learning the environment, learning some of their teammates. Then they do a formal 2-week training throughout the entire shop. They go through starting in the front office, through to shipping. They spend anywhere from a few hours to a half a day or a full day in a given department, learning the people and learning what that department has to go through on a daily basis to do their processes.
Help people see that big picture.
Right. So that's the 2-week. They graduate. We go through a little tour. The management team treats, they have to treat the management team as we're new customers showing up at their facility, and take us on a tour. Tell us what you do about the thing. So the very last one we did, we failed as an organization. It was a very poor interview. Clearly there wasn't enough learning going on. Since then, that was probably about 4 months ago, we completely revamped our training booklet.
Yep.
And we identified a huge gap with our trainers. We just kind of made the assumption that people can follow and make sure that certain criteria was part of the training curriculum. And that was a bad assumption, right? Because not everybody's a trainer. I don't care how many years of experience you have. You have to be able to really convey a mention and convey why we're doing certain things. So that was a huge gap that we
Big mistake a lot of people make, right? A great doer does in no means make them a great trainer. Yeah,
right.
100%.
Right. So we've rehashed all that, and we're actually just in the throes of wrapping that up. And we've had a few new hires just in the past few months that will end up now going through that training after we've worked with some trainers to properly convey all the proper information, and we're going to see how that goes. If that doesn't work, we'll move
do
on
something
from there
else
and try something else.
That's all right. So you're looking at really giving the people that start there a full picture of what the whole entire organization is up to. Do you think that that's so my view, right? The best way to get the best outcome is for whatever you're doing, no matter where you are in the process. I don't care if it's a service business like mine or Willington Nameplate. If the person working in the system is thinking about the end goal, not their step, but the full end goal, I think that puts us in a great position to make better outcome. It sounds like you're kind of in that same mindset.
Agree. At a minimum, you got to know what you're supporting before and after.
That's right.
At a minimum, but yeah, certainly just always having that the concept of the customer. You know, what adds value to the customer, right? That's a lot of people you've had on this podcast, that's what they always talk about, right? What adds value to the customer? Everything else is just noise.
That's right.
So you got to find what that is, and you got to focus on it
and boil it down and get to that end customer.
Yep. So ideally though, this onboarding would be we bring in this Willington employee. And whatever the time frame, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, they really spend more time and get baseline trained in all those activities, so that when they graduate, they may go to where they I shouldn't say where they were intended to go. They go to where the company needs them.
Right.
It's not like we hired you for Shear and you're going to go train here for 2 weeks and you go to Shear. No, your 6 month training's up. You're baseline trained in everything within the shop. Guess what? Now you're needed here, and you just go.
That's a big investment, Brett. That's a big investment.
It is.
But you think there's going to be a big return on that because now you've got a factory of utility players.
Right.
So now there is no Joe Smiths out, and we can't run the thing.
Correct.
Because there's like 15 other Joe Smiths that could run that.
It may not be as efficient as Joe Smith, right? But it'll get done, and it won't interfere with the customer's expectation.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my ideal.
That's the vision. That's the dream. So that's really great. And I think that's a lot different than most other people do it. To your point, right?
Yes.
If I got hired for Shear, I got hired for shipping. I get maybe a quick overview, 2 weeks training, boom, stick me in shipping, and let's hope I like it there.
And I'd like to just give a plug. That was a concept that I derived from Westminster Tool. As you know, they're game changers when it comes to that.
They are.
I want to give them a plug because that was not all.
We should. Yeah, we got to get them on here. Westminster Academy.
Oh yeah,
they're doing a great job. The cross training. I know. I've been super inspired by what Ray and the team are doing over there. So that's great. So let's switch gears a little bit. Actually, let me say one thing. So what is the culture? So I get to work in Willington. How would you describe the culture inside the organization? What's it feel like to work there?
You know, it's a team-based culture. You come in, again, you work to the good of the company, the good of the customer. They know that the company has their best interests in mind. They don't treat them just like a cog in the wheel. We try and tell everyone that they have a voice. You have, per our quality system, you have the right to stop a job at any time, question the integrity or the process. And just continue to engage, right? We want to engage constantly. Ownership, management is on the floor talking to people, not just about work, but families, what's going on. So we treat it like a family atmosphere. We have a lot of fun.
Yep.
We have the owner, Mike. You'd go around and he'd throw water on people.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what's going on today? And joke around.
Joke around.
Yeah.
How many people are working right now at Willington?
We're almost 80.
Okay.
Almost 80. And it's a good environment. You can just feel it. We're serious. We definitely move a lot of product, but we also try and have fun. We try and reinvest in employees as much as we can. We try and do good things for them, reward them, whether it's pizza luncheons, it's cookouts. I finally was able to push Lynn, our HR and co-owner there to do a community day where we're shutting down the company. We're paying all our employees, but we're going to do a community involvement day.
That's exciting.
It's something I'm passionate about, and we have a lot of employees that are. But it was one of those things where, again, being a small family-run business, what do you mean we're going to shut down a day, right? What about our customers? Right. Plan for it. It doesn't, plan for it, schedule around it. It's going to work.
Having engaged employees that care about the customer ultimately is what's going to help that customer be great. How do you guys communicate to keep that? So you've mentioned sort of some one-off communications and engaging it, and I think that before we move on to anything else, I just want to say that I think having those one-on-one interactions outside of whatever structured communication is just so important, right? Because sometimes it's hard to get into that one-on-one communication, but I think you need to walk, some people call it walk around management, walk the floor and just talk to people. Hi, Ari. Hi, Brett. What's going on? Kind of get that serendipitous communication. But in addition to that, do you guys have like a meeting rhythm? Do you do monthly company-wide meetings?
Yep.
Maybe share kind of how you guys keep that communication flow, because I think, that's such an important piece of making a company be successful. And you can speak to it more than I can, but I think that communication with employees, not just the one-on-one here and there, but constantly making them feel like part of the team. Right. So talk about how you guys do that.
Yeah, so that's been a big focus the few years that I've been there, is getting more information, more communication out to everybody, right? We really have nothing to hide. And as a private company, we can give out as much as we want or as little as we want. Right. Whereas before in the big bureaucratic companies, there were limitations at times what you can do and who you can talk to.
Yep.
Here, I don't have that. It's whatever I want to tell them.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, we got to give them as much ammo to be dangerous, to make the right decisions. The more data they have, the better, more informed decision making they can do. So we have a structure. Like most people, we have a quick little morning meeting with all the key leads and managers. What's our challenges today? Any lessons learned from the previous day, whether it be a quality issue, miscommunication, right? And then also things that are coming up, customer needs. So that starts it. But then now they have to take it back to their teams, which they have a meeting about right near break or just after break to go through, okay, hey guys, this came up. Just what's pertinent information, quick hits. It's a 5-minute meeting.
Yep.
And then once a week during that meeting, they also go through key KPIs for their department. Those key KPIs are standardized for each department, and they're also reinforced at a monthly company KPI where we go through all that. It gets posted. Anyone can ask any kind of questions. And our 3 most important KPIs are all tied to the bonus too for everyone, and it's all shared. Which certainly could frustrate some individuals, right? Well, how come because of so-and-so we're not getting this?
Right.
Well, because it's a team-based approach. So it's constantly reinforcing that, well, they may have failed, but it's on all of us to help them not to fail. So
we
what
need to
do we
rise
need
and
to
fall
do?
together.
Correct. So that's been a shift, right? That everything was always departmentalized, and you're trying to expand people's horizons to say, yeah, but you always got to look bigger picture and see what other teammates might be in need to support the customer.
Yep.
So there is constant communication, and the key now is trying to get the leads, we're working leads, to reinforce that strategic communication, right? That's still the gap that we're playing with, and that's one of our strategic initiatives to make sure that you constantly reinforce it so then all the employees get on board with it. Because right now it gets a little piecemeal, and you kind of wonder, well, what happened to that strategic directive we had? Well, it hasn't been reinforced enough for anyone to really have it take off.
Right.
So that's part of our ongoing challenge and things we're trying to improve.
That's awesome. Have you read Scale Up or the Rockefeller Habits?
Piecemeal.
Okay, because that's what it sounds like, because we use the same thing, and that sounds like a lot of that same methodology. But yeah, those morning huddles, the constant communication, up and down flow, KPIs that all serve to work together. I think that's been really powerful. Have you guys been doing that for a number of years? And have you seen that to really help ultimately deliver better outcomes for customers and better financial results for Willington Nameplate?
Yes, absolutely. It's helped. It's all reinforced our growth over the last few years.
That's fantastic.
Definitely. You can ask just about anybody, and they should have a good understanding of what's going on at a minimum in their department, and definitely usually with where the company stands and how we're doing.
So let's circle back to growth a little bit. You had mentioned it earlier that part of the growth over the last decade has been some acquisitions, and I think people are always interested in the inorganic growth as well as organic growth, right? So I don't know how much you know, because I think some of it was before your time, but why was acquisitions a part of the strategy for Willington's growth. Do you think it's a strategic plan that's working? And if it is working, what are some of the key takeaways that someone else might get if they're considering some type of acquisitive growth?
For the acquisitions that we've already that have already taken place, it was more about just growth, top line growth, certainly some diversification. I mentioned the big benefit from that first acquisition that really helped spawn our whole quality system, which has helped from a differentiation standpoint. The second set of acquisitions helped reinforce a specific core product line, which ties in a lot to the aerospace and that military market. So that helped reinforce that. So now in the future, what we're looking for is things that can continue to reinforce core processes we have. Ideally, I'd like to have more of a regional, like you and I might have had some talks about, with things you're working on. So that way we can minimize our risk, right? Being in the automotive and the aerospace world, the OEMs like to minimize risk as much as possible, right? And we should be no different. So to have a second facility with redundant capabilities, God forbid anything happens, you'd be able to still support customers, with the proper plan in place. So that's ideally where we're going.
So there's some strategic things. So
absolutely.
I think, maybe for you because you lived it, it's a little bit easier. But there's some really important stuff you talked about there, right? So as you're going through, the inorganic acquisitive growth, it wasn't just like find someone who's for sale and buy them, right? It was some strategic objectives that were met, right? Number one, getting you into automotive and building a quality platform, which you guys wanted to do, but this helped jumpstart that. And once you had that going, looking at opportunities to say, hey, here's a company that is in a deeper in the aerospace market or the military defense where we want to go. So let's bring them in. And then going forward, you're strategically looking at diversification, redundancy in plants, and maybe get bigger markets. So I think that's important that people realize there's some strategic advantages there. And maybe talk a little bit about, obviously it's not always easy to find these things. And so I'm sure you've run into deals that weren't worth having and have passed on. So maybe talk a little bit about that and why it's important to not have a bad deal.
You got to be strategic. Cash is cash, right? Cash is king for a reason. And being a small company, it's even more valuable.
That's right.
So you got to be strategic. You got to put a lot of thought behind it. Even as simple as us buying equipment these days, there's a process in place now where you have to have meetings, there's got to be sign off, and there's got to be a return on investment. What are we looking at here? You can't just shoot from the hip and say, we need it, let's get it.
Right.
So that ties in a lot. We had a label company that we had acquired probably 18 years ago, small little company in Vermont that we never really reinvested in, never really worked with. We just bought it kind of to buy it. And it held its own, didn't really make a lot of money, but it was coming to the point where it's a little bit of a distraction from what our core, it wasn't even any core markets or industries that we're serving out of this facility. So kind of made the strategic decision of, well, let's call a spade, even though it was the owner's baby.
Right.
It didn't fit anymore. So we were able to sell that company. We were able to sell the building that we had owned. So it worked out really well, and able to reinvest that cash in the core business.
Yeah.
So,
in hindsight, maybe would have thought differently about it, knowing what you guys know now. And that was the first one, so maybe whatever. But looking back on it now, maybe would have taken a different strategic approach. Maybe that wasn't the right move.
If it could have been the right move, but it would have required more engagement and more investment.
Right.
And that strategic platform was missing at that time.
Right.
So it eventually it was going to happen one way or the other, or we could potentially have taken that work down here.
Right.
So but being not in our core markets and industry, it was kind of an easy decision. And strategically, it should have been something we thought about more, right? And certainly, to your point, that's something we would is a serious consideration today. What's that customer base? What industries do that support? Not just, to your point, it's a nice acquisition, let's just grow the top line, right?
Exactly. Top line is
it's got to fit.
That's
it's got to fit, and it's got to drive value.
Right. Well, what do they say? Value. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. So just buying for buying's sake. You touched on something which I really like to pull a thread on a little bit. businesses all the time of all sizes need to make investments if they want to continue to deliver quality and to grow over time. But there's limited pool of resources.
Yes.
And so, you guys, everyone has to make a decision where they invest in. And there's so many demands. There's human capital, investing in culture. There's equipment. There's facilities. There's marketing. There's sales. There's IT. Like there's all kinds of stuff. So when you guys are looking and trying to make those decisions of where to invest, Brett, tell me what the process looks like. How does Willington go look at those competing demands and decide where to invest?
We have a couple mechanisms for that. We do a yearly strategic planning process. That goes from everything for creating our sales budget to developing our expense budgets, resources, looking at resources for the upcoming year, cross-training, lean, all that stuff. It's all part of a strategic planning process. All the key leadership individuals are tied into that. Every year it's improved. Originally it started off with me, the controller, and the owners.
Right.
Next year it morphed a little bit. We included all of management. And then from there was leads. So now we've got our tentacles in just about everybody, so that again they can reinforce whatever strategic avenues we're trying to take to make sure that everyone's rowing in the same direction. So we do that. We also do a 3-year outlook. Twice a year we're doing it. Just taking a snapshot by the management team of where we're at. Has anything changed within our long-term strategic vision? And then also, obviously, a big part of that is investments, whether it be people, facilities, or equipment. We have a yearly review and an ongoing review of capital and expenditures.
And try and figure out. So if I'm looking at two competing expenses, right? People come in different areas. Hey, I want a new ERP. I want to improve I want a new machine. I want to. You talked about the training methodology that you have. That's not going to come cheap, right? You're going to learn how to do that.
Right.
So is it the whole leadership team that kind of figures out which one we want to work on this year? Like, how do you tie in strategy to those investments, right? Because it's easy to make a case. They're all super important.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. If it needs to be, we'll talk it out as a team. I mean, we have no problem with that. Again, we're very open and honest with one another. That's a key part of the culture attributes as well. And just talk it through and brainstorm and come up with a solution. It's definitely not Brett's show.
Right.
I have a team for a reason, so the team has to add value and make their case, so to speak. And it very rarely has it come down to that. Because we're doing a good job talking about it well in advance and planning for it. So I think we've been pretty lucky in that regard. But if we wouldn't have conflicts if it did come up.
So when you look back at the doubling that you guys have done over the last decade in size, what are some of the key investments you think you guys have made that have enabled that growth?
Definitely in the people, right?
Yep.
We've that's been key. We've transformed. We've lost some legacy people, both through attrition and lack of fit.
Yep.
People had been with the company a long time, but they really didn't fit the new vision of the future and who we wanted to be. They were those people, they would pump out parts all day, but not know why or care. But we want people that care and know why they're doing it and that can challenge, again, the infrastructure.
Sure.
So that's definitely been a key component of that. And I forgot what the question was.
How much you guys have invested in the last 10 years to facilitate that growth?
Okay.
So, and also, investing in people for sure.
And the biggest gap, though, honestly, was the technology piece.
Yep.
God bless Marcel. He was the MacGyver of duct tape, bubble gum, Swiss Army knife, and a paper clip. We'll make it work. He was also very knee-jerk. Hey, customer says they want us to make this. Well, I got to go get this piece of equipment, but it would be a used piece of equipment. It was already well past its prime by the time we got it. We'd put that into play. So today we kind of morphed everything, and we had this conglomerate of very diverse processes, which is great from our customers' perspective because we can pretty much produce any capability for them. But we're also spread pretty thin, and we did not reinvest. We did a very poor job. It's not that he took all the money. He gave plenty of money back to the employees, but there just wasn't that strategic thought process.
Going back to where to invest, right? Just putting money in without that strategic vision,
right.
so that because each investment needs to build off the other one if we're going to get a result.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's the shotgun effect, and we don't get a lot
Correct.
of results. Yeah.
So that's been really one of the key focuses I've had in the last 5 years. We've easily spent at least 10 to 20% of our annual revenues reinvested in
technology. Technology meaning like equipment technology,
Yes.
manufacturing technology. Are you guys in like robots, cobots at all?
We're not into automation.
Okay.
Just mostly technology, CNC equipment. So different levels of less resources.
Right. Ability to do more output per person by investing in more equipment.
So we've acquired some lasers, some digital cutting tools, automated turret presses. We just finally issued a purchase order for a digital label machine.
There you go.
It's where it is. We can't keep dealing with these clunkers that we have to get the work out. They're very cumbersome, and it's hard to maintain the integrity of our quality with old equipment. So.
Wow, so it's constantly looking to reinvest. And is there any like new innovations or new technologies out there that are kind of exciting you right now?
Well, the digital's huge. I mean, because digital is really changing the game in a lot of different ways. Things that traditionally you had to do a certain process or use a certain machine, you can get this rinky-dink digital printer that can spit it out no problem, with no waste, no setup time.
Oh wow!
Like wow! And it's not just for the labels, because now for the sheet fed, the nameplate products, they have digital sheet printing machines as well. And it's come a long way. The durability used to always be a concern. Well, they've kind of been working on that durability piece too. Automation, definitely, we have some of our friendly competitors that we hold in high regard are integrating automation, whether it be robotics, automated scanning equipment. They're building that in. So definitely it's a challenge, just like everyone else. Yes, different type of commodity, but we need the same level of technology involvement for the future, because certain positions you can't expect you're going to find individuals that are going to stay there for their careers.
Right.
They're just not. So either it's going to have to be a rotation, or you're going to need technology to supplant it.
Wow. So you guys are deep investing in that technology, and it's paying off. So that's super exciting. Being a technology guy myself, I'm always like super into that. So just kind of as we start to like move towards the end here, I just wanted to actually like a personal kind of question and see if people can connect to that too, which is like, what drives you to succeed? I mean, looking at you, kind of your background, we touched on it early on, like you've just done so much stuff. And I think, whether it's a business owner that's always looking for somebody to step up and see someone else who can develop the passion for the business and the people and have like a president, right? So, obviously, Marcel and then, Mike and like those, that family. So for them to look and see and have somebody like you must be so rewarding. I imagine other people that listen to this podcast would be really interested in understanding how they find someone like that. And it's cool that someone saw it in you and said, hey, you got this, Brett. So what's in you that drives you? What's gotten you to where you are?
I'm a pretty competitive person. It started with the education. That's why I got those degrees. It was a challenge to get better than the next person, right? So learning's a big part of that, and just being people-centric. Being able to get your team to respond, to make sure that they comprehend the direction, what's expected of them, right? That's a huge thing. Everybody needs to know, what do you expect of me, and what are you going to do to support me to get there?
Yep.
Right, so make sure that that's clear direction. But definitely the competitive landscape is what really has pushed me to where I am today, to continue to grow and not just be happy with the status quo. Okay, this is great. How can I continue to learn and grow? It doesn't mean I have to jump from company to company, but with each new skill, I've taken something new to my next role. So I've got a little bit of everything today, and that's kind of my hybrid makeup.
Nice. Yeah. So before I get into the rapid fire round of questions, which is one of my favorite parts, two more quick questions for you. One is, how'd you guys end up getting the job for the Patriots, putting in the seats? So
our customers, the seat tag.
Okay.
The seat manufacturer.
Right.
So they've been a customer of ours through actually that acquisition, the first acquisition about 8 years ago, for a long time.
Okay.
And that was their account. So
they put the seats in, and you got to put the.
Yep.
So when you go down in Gillette Stadium and you're in like section whatever,
don't peel off those tags and take them home.
Those tags gotta stay.
Yep.
And also, I love to ask this question, which is, if you're thinking about kind of, I like to call it the white whale customer, the customer that you'd like to get their attention, that you'd love them to pick up the phone and give you guys a call and give Willington a chance to kind of help make their communications bounce. Who's that customer for you guys?
I wouldn't say it's a specific name of a customer, type of customer.
Okay.
One that values partnerships. We value that with everybody that we deal with. That's just, again, part of our culture and who we are. To value everything that we have to offer, wants to treat us as a partner, to work with them, to help develop solutions, have that camaraderie, so to speak, and just know that they can be counted on and they're trustworthy. That's as simple as that. I don't need that big OEM.
Right.
You know, a lot of times those are the worst people to deal with. And even some of the small ones, right? They might be terrible to deal with. But just someone that values the partnership and that it's a two-way street and it's not just something that, it's our way or the highway.
Looking for someone to enable essential communication,
Correct.
right?
That values that.
There
yes.
you go. That's awesome. Well, let's get into some rapid fire questions. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, hot take. Here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Yankees.
Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
Staycation or exotic destination?
Staycation.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
If you could do anything other than what you're doing today, president of Willington Nameplate, what would you do?
I'd be involved with football somehow. Love football.
All right.
Probably as a coach.
Coach? That's probably a good role for you. What's your favorite business book, if you have one?
Good to great.
Okay. What's one thing that you learned early in your career or early in your life that you feel propelled you to the success that you've had?
I had a manager at one point in time. There was a small group, 4 of us, and I actually tell this story to my team all the time. 4 of us that were always in before he was. He would come in, wouldn't say hi to you until about 11 o'clock in the morning. You'd see him, he'd walk through, still wouldn't say hi to you. Nice guy. I learned a lot from him, but the one takeaway I had from that is whenever I'm going to be a leader of other people, respect other people and treat them like you'd want to be treated. So that's one of the first things I try and do is make sure I interact with my team, get out there to the floor, interact with people even before I get started. So that was one of my key takeaways early on.
That's a really good one. What's one thing you've learned late in your career or later in your life that you wish you go back to younger Brett and let him know so that so he could do better faster?
Oh, that's a good one. I think just doing a better job listening and making sure that you understood and didn't jump to conclusions. The younger Brett would jump to conclusions too soon. Make more knee-jerk reactions than put some strategic thought behind it.
Yeah, that's a very, very good takeaway. So if someone wants to connect with you after this podcast, Brett, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Contact Willington Nameplate.
And ask for Brett Greene. There we go.
Right there. You can find the link and you can get right to me.
Cool. And all that information will be in the podcast notes, whether it's YouTube, Apple Podcast, or whatever. And last question, given everything that we've talked about today, Brett, if you're looking at the listeners for today and you say, hey, there's just one thing we talked about today that you think would be a great takeaway for them to take with them that they could really learn, what do you think we talked about today that would be that kind of one big nugget?
I just think the investments, strategic investments, you always need to have a good understanding of your direction and making sure that the investments tie in with where that direction is going. So like we said, a key thing for us was not only technology, but more importantly, our people. Continuing to invest in them, putting the right structure in place that will allow them to grow and develop in line with what our company's expectations are.
That's awesome. And for me, I think just the way you were talking about and your passion behind getting people like fully trained up and giving them that kind of like utility player approach where they get to see the whole process and not understand just how to do shipping or setup or purchasing or customer service, but that they're really understanding what Willington Nameplate does to enable that essential communication for the customer. I think, man, if you can get everybody in your organization to see that big picture and think about how to deliver that end goal, that's going to be an amazingly powerful tool to make everything run better and smoother and have that best outcome for the customer. So I think it was really great stuff, Brett. I super appreciate your time here today. Thanks so much for coming out and being part of the Made in America podcast.
Thanks a lot, Ari. I love this podcast and I'm happy to participate.
Awesome.
Thank you.
As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I definitely want your feedback and hope you subscribe. But what I want the most is to build a community where we learn and grow with each other. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the time we're spending together. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.